afternoon, everybody. I am Dr. Jenkins. I'm the library director, and we are going to have a wonderful presentation today from Renee Stanton. Renee is a healthcare professional with extensive experience overseeing imaging services in acute care hospitals and outpatient services. She's a highly motivated leader with a vision for patient safety in healthcare. She has strong analytical skills. She's creative and an innovative problem solver, and she's doing us a wonderful, great favor today by doing a presentation on African American storytelling. So I'm going to turn over the presentation to her and let her get started. I'm going to operate the controls. We're going to pass each other here. Thank you.
Bruh Rabbit, he did one quick suck right to Tar Baby's face, and oh, it was caught right on his jaw. Let me go, he cried out to Tar Baby, and Tar Baby just froze. Boom! And he hit him again, another sock, and he's stuck now, toothless. You better let me go. And he said, if you don't let me go, I'll hit you with my paw. Pow! He hit him with his paw, and the other paw. That old bruh Fox came up and said, ha ha, tricked you again, bruh Rabbit. It ain't nothing but a tar baby. Dr. Jenkins, fellow professors, students, thank you for being here today. We're going to talk about African folklore and stories. Stories is how culture moves from generation to generation and how we keep our culture alive. Today I'll have some PowerPoints for you, and I'll also have a couple of small stories. So we'll go ahead and start with the third slide as it comes up. We're going to talk about African American history and how it affects. So we'll start this first link. I've taken some links off of YouTube, and I have that here. So this is a 2-minute presentation that I think you'll find interesting.
History dates back to the colonial period, when Africans were brought to the colonies as slaves. Yet black history was largely ignored by historians and the general public until the 20th century. At the forefront of the push to bring black history into public consciousness was a scholar and son of former slaves, Dr. Carter G Woodson. Born in Virginia in 1875, Carter Woodson escaped poverty through education, ultimately receiving a doctorate from Harvard University in 1912. Throughout his studies, Woodson had noticed that the role of African Americans in American history was either misrepresented or missing altogether from the history books. Determined to encourage black studies and tell the stories of his people, he founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life in 1915. A year later, he began publishing the Journal of Negro History, now known as the Journal of African American History. Page by page, African Americans wrote themselves back into the history books. Encouraged by a swell of support, Woodson organized the first annual Negro History Week in 1926 for the second week of February, to coincide with the birthdays of both Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. The civil rights movement of the 1960s reflected the growing pride and cultural identity among the black community. By the nation's bicentennial in 1976, African Americans were embracing their heritage and reminding America that black was beautiful. 26 years after Carter Woodson's death, Negro History Week became Black History Month as part of the bicentennial celebration. Dr. Carter Woodson left an indelible mark. His work ensured the long and rich histories of African Americans would never be forgotten. Black History Month continues. We honor the people and their achievements in celebration of the African American experience.
All right, so thank you for watching that small presentation. What was the history called before it was Black History Month?
Negro History Week.
Oh, wow, we've got several people who paid attention. Who said that back there? Let's just pass it back. There's your gift, and let's pass that back to the person that answered over there. Very good.
Yours is in my
Yeah.
We ain't gonna let nobody turn us around.
Yeah, and she'll make that stop in just a second. We were having a little trouble with it taking on a life of its own. What year was it that the civil rights started? Was it in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s?
I'm not gonna answer. You got it.
50s and 60s? Who said 60s? Okay, she won already. We're gonna give you we're gonna give you a gift for trying. You said 650s, right? 60s. There.
There was a march.
Oh, then he gets two
There was
gifts.
actually a march in the 40s.
See, that's why I love learning these, because we can talk with each other and you can help me.
There was a march in the 50s.
In 1959 and 58? Thank you for sharing that. I'm open and I'm flexible. All right. What other events did you notice in here that maybe it's worthwhile mentioning? Anything? So this is what we'll do today. As I talk, I'll come back and ask you a few questions. If you know the answers, fine. If it's something that you like to share, that's great too. So our next slide is just talking about African American storytelling. It's a story that continues beyond war and the warrior. It's a story that outlives the sound of war drums, and it exploits the brave fighters. So it's important to talk about storytellers. Storytelling is part of history. It is the story that saves our offspring from blundering like blind beggars into the spikes of cactus fence. The story is our escort. Without it, we are blind. Does the blind man own his escort? No, neither do we, the story. Rather, it is the story that owns us and directs us. And we'll show this one also. This is another link of Black History Week.
They came from different lands, all facing an uncertain future. English and Ashanti, Mende and Portuguese, German and Igbo, Fanti and Spaniard, French and Angolan, some seeking adventure or riches or religious freedom. Others were captives, bartered and sold like cattle. Together they could build a nation and struggle over the very meaning of freedom and create the America we have inherited today.
I don't think you can understand race relations today without understanding slavery. Even though people will say, I didn't do it, my father didn't do it, even my grandparents, they didn't do it. One of the things that's essential is to know that slavery is not just a Southern institution, it's an American institution.
What evolves in North America is the belief system where to be black meant to be a slave, and to be a slave meant to be black.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. Why is it self-evident? It came from God. They're inalienable. Government secures them. The Marxist document didn't apply to black folks. And the man who wrote those words, Thomas Jefferson, kept slaves. He also wrote sometime later to a friend, there's a just God. We're going to pay for this.
Slavery and freedom existed side by side in this country. I think the issue is, did it always have to be that way? And the early history of America indicates that it probably did not.
So slavery and freedom, did they work together or were they separate? What did they talk about in that presentation? Together or separate? Slavery and freedom.
They were definitely separate, Renee.
They were definitely separate. Because in the early part of when America was discovered, there were 100 Africans that were here before slavery started. And this is just a small glimpse as we start moving into the storytelling portion of this presentation. One of the other items mentioned there was a president. Which president did they mention? Jefferson. Okay, more gifts, more prizes. All right, I heard several people say, pass that right back to her, please. And someone else? Right here, okay. Here. I think it was. Okay, so good. You guys, you're really helping me with this presentation. A story, you'll find out, cannot be told by just one person. It takes a group of people to do that. So I want to ask you all a question. Do you remember when you were a child, did you ever play the games like the little hand clapping games or the little Sally Walker games? Do you remember those? Mm-hmm. Okay, so who wants to come up here and do little Sally Walker? No, I knew you did. But I still wanted to talk a little bit about it. So if you remember it as I do it, help me out, because what you'll hear is depending on where you grew up, the words may be a little different. So, little Sally Walker sitting in a saucer. Rise, Sally, rise. Open eyes, hands on your hips, that won't slip. Isn't that it? Okay, so now let me share a little culture with you on how my little Sally Walker went. And if there's anybody out there that remembers this, please help me. And if you're brave enough, come on up and help me. No. All right. Little Sally Walker sitting in a saucer. Rise, Sally, rise. Wipe your heaping eyes and put your hands on your hips and let your backbone slip. Oh, shake it to the east. Oh, shake it to the west. Oh, shake it to the very one that you know the best. Wow! All right, you people with noisemakers, noise, okay? That's all part of the storytelling. So I really do have clappers and information for you guys to help us, because now this is the audience participation. Will you pass some of that back, please? Because with every story, the more fun you can make it, the more that you'll remember. And pass those that way. Oh, and you need one. And you're really climbing up. So.
This is my communications class.
So the story is the escort. Without it, we're blind. And we already talked about that. We're going to go right to the next slide. The oral arts of Africa are rich and varied, developing with the beginnings of African culture. They may remain living traditions that continue to evolve and flourish today. And you can go to the next slide. So, I'll tell you something. Stories are not just entertainment. They are not entertainment. They fight off illness and death. You don't have anything if you don't have stories. How many of you have stories that you remember as a child? Some of you are probably telling stories right now to your children that your parents told you. Is that true? I see a lot of heads nodding. What are some of those stories? Can you name some? What's some of the favorite stories, what they're about?
What grandfather did on the railroad.
What was that?
Your grandfather did on the railroad in Canada.
Oh, okay, see, there's a story that talks about the history of your family, correct? What else? I heard several.
That they didn't have technology like we do nowadays. That they struggled a lot harder, that we appreciate a lot more.
Yes, that they didn't have technologies these days. What else? What other stories do you?
That they have to walk 5 miles.
Oh, yeah.
School buses.
Yeah, we all know the 5-mile walk. Right, yes.
The small amount of toys you got for Christmas.
Oh, right. Limitations. And what else?
The fun facts that happen in the family, some like little fun stories that really happen, real stories.
Right, the fun facts that happened in the story. So we could start off with, oh, woe is me and how bad things are. But there's a way to get through misery and strife. And how do we do that? We do that with storytelling. We do that with the games that we play. Here's one that I think it will be a lot of fun for you guys. Do you remember the one, a sailor went to sea? Do you remember that? Some of you do. Some of you go, where are you pulling these from? So this is how we're going to do a sailor went to sea. First off, can I hear your noisemakers? Just make some noise. All right. So here's what we're going to do. When I say a sailor went to sea, I want this side of the room to make the sea. Sea, okay? And then when I say a sailor went to knee, I want this side of the room to go knee, okay? So let me do it first, okay? So that you know how it goes. No noise yet. So it goes like this for you that don't know it. A sailor went to sea to see what he can see, but all that he can see is the bottom of the deep blue sea. And then a sailor went to knee to see what he could knee. Okay, you got it? And you heard how that sounded? It was just okay, no big deal. It wasn't even great. Okay, so here we go with our sound effects. A sailor went to see what he could, but all that he could was the bottom of the deep blue. A sailor went to see what he could, but all that he could was the bottom of the deep blue. A sailor went to see what he could, and all that he could was the bottom of the deep blue. All right, give yourself a good And that's the fun of stories. So you may have come in today already thinking, oh, what a horrible day. I can't believe I have to come to this lecture. I may have promised her, now I'm here. But already you're feeling a sense of, oh, this is kind of fun. I'm forgetting my past. Think about that. Way back in the day when all you had was misery and this was your only outlook that you could look forward to. So that's what storytelling is all about. So the journey through slavery, we did the clapping. We're going to skip this one and go right next to the next slide without going to the PowerPoint.
Okay.
We don't need to see that.
That was fun.
Yeah, no, we don't need to see that. It's the next slide. It already, somehow it showed already on the other one.
Oh, you want the
Next slide.
singing, just the next slide.
Yeah, you're okay, right there. Just for all of you who are interested in some of the things that I've quoted today, this is the sources, the work sites, so this will be available for you after the class, after the lecture.
Did you want me to go to the last?
No, not yet. No, not yet. But I think it's one more slide. Is it one more slide? Not, it's okay. We're gonna.
Okay, where do you want me to do?
You're okay.
The story, right here?
You're okay. I'm going to go ahead and do a story for you guys. When we did Brer Rabbit, that was a story that my dad told us all the time. It was so funny to us because he would get so into it. And every time that he told that story, he would change how Brer Rabbit would hit that tar baby. You know, there's always a moral to the story. And we were learning as children because we would, of course, say, why would that rabbit keep hitting tar baby like that when it's nothing but tar? Well, he was being tricked. He was being tricked by the fox who wanted the food over to the side. The fox knew the only way to get him out of there was to get him stuck on something else. You can take those same tales and today think about it. How many people try to trick us, get our mind off of what we're trying to do, and get us stuck on a tar baby? So these tales have so much meaning in them. There is one, though, that I just love, and this particular story is called People Could Fly. And I want to read that to you today, and then afterwards we'll open up for questions. So this story is People Could Fly. Let me introduce it. This story is written by Virginia Hamilton. She's a prize-winning American Black folktale writer. Her fantasy is about slaves who possessed magic that they could fly or perhaps even disappear. But it is a great story to be told. They say people can fly. Say long ago, way back in Africa, people could mount up on wings and just fly away. Black, shiny wings are flapping way up in the sky. Then many of the Africans could fly. Some of them couldn't, but many could. They say the folks went up and down on the slave ships, and the misery of the slave ships caused some of them to lose their wings, and they couldn't fly anymore. Why? Because they lost the sweet scent of Africa. Say the people that could fly, called him Toby, said that he could keep that secret magic. He had it way inside of himself. Say he was way out there on the plantation, and people all around him was out in those hot fields. One such that could fly, that Toby, he stood tall, and yet there was another who wasn't quite as well. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah had a little babe on her back, and it was a hot day out in those fields. She trembled out in the sun. The slaves labored out in the fields from sunup to sundown. Say they had this guy, called him Master. Master, they say he was a hard lump of clay. They said he was a hard, glitty coal. That he was a rock pile. He wouldn't be moved. His overseer came on a horse, and he pointed out the slaves who were slowing down. So the one they called driver, he had a whip, and he would crack that whip on those slaves with a slice open cut of pain. Sarah, she hoed and chopped, and she had that babe sleeping on her back. Say the child grew hungry. Say Sarah was so tired out in those hot fields. That babe just started to brawling. It was brawling too loud, and Sarah couldn't stop to feed it, couldn't stop to soothe it or quiet it down, so she just let it cry. She didn't know what she could do. She just had to let it cry. "Keep that thing quiet," cried the overseer. He pointed at that babe, and that woman, she just crunched so low. And the driver, he cracked his whip right around her and the babe. And the old man was there, and he looked. "I must go soon," she said. "Soon," he said. Sarah couldn't stand straight any longer. She was too weak. The sun had burned her face, and that babe just cried and cried. "Pity me," said it sounded like it was saying. "Get up, you old black cow," cried that overseer, and he pointed right at her head, and again with that whip he sliced. And down went Sarah and the babe. Toby was there, and no one else could help her. "Now," she cried, "before it's too late now." And he reached out his arms. "Oh my God, come here. In slow, fast and slow words. He whispered the magic words. He raised his arms, and the young woman, she lifted one foot up on the air, then the other. She flew clumsily at first, but then she took off, up over the fence, the woods, the sky, way up high. She flew into the sky. The overseer, he ran after her, and he was hollering as Sarah flew into the sky. She flew so high, she was flying like an eagle now, and she was gone from sight. No one dared speak about that. They couldn't believe it, but it was, because they say it was. So the next day, it was dead hot in those fields, dead hot. A young man there, he fell from that heat. The driver come along, he looked at him and he whipped him too. He had forgot about yesterday, and he's whipping on this poor guy. The words of the ancient African words of magic, they're heard, but they're not always remembered. The young man had forgot, and as soon as he heard them, he took up and he flew away. He rode a while, and he flew. And then another one fell from a heat, and another, and another. And the next thing you know, Toby was there. And Toby just cried out to all of those who were laying on that outfield, "Komaya." In those silent words of magic, what they remembered came alive, and they took off, and they started to fly right up into the sky. Those were flying black and shiny and wheeling up over the sky. The overseer, he was there that day. They crossed the roads, they crossed the fields, and they kept flying. And the overseer, he's looking and "I'm gonna do something about it," said the overseer. "Seize the old man," cried the overseer. I heard him say those magic words. The one calling himself master, he came running. The driver got his whip out. He was ready to curl it around old Toby. He meant to kill old black Toby. But Toby, he just looked at him and he laughed. "Don't you know who I am? Why, we's the one that can fly. We have the magic within us." And he sighed those silent words, "Kumakaya, Kabe." And up he went, up into the sky. There was a great outcrying. The bent back straightened up. The old and the young were all called slaves. They flew. They joined their hands and away they went. Now there were others that were there, but they couldn't fly. They held hands like they were going to ring sing, but they didn't. They just knew they had to hold on for a better day. Say the old man Toby, when those who were flying were up in the sky, he was right behind them. He wasn't crying, but he wasn't laughing. He was the seer. He was the seer of the slaves in the sky. But he did look back at those that couldn't fly, and they had that look. "Take us with you." But he couldn't. Their looks were as if they spoke, and Toby couldn't take them with him. They must wait until there was a chance to run. "Goodbye, goodbye," cried Toby to those who couldn't fly. So off they went, eagles in the sky. So they say, the overseer told it, the one called master, said all that happened that day in the field was a lie. It was a trick. It never happened. The driver, he just kept his mouth shut. The slaves who could not fly, they told their children about what happened that day. They told their children, and their children told their children, and their children told their children, because they love to talk about stories. They love to talk about the days when they were free. They love sitting around the fire, that firelight, and telling the stories of how freedom came at such a price. But freedom is here, and that you, my child, can fly. As they told their children, I am now telling you, you too can fly. I love this story. It's such an excellent story. This story, as written by Virginia Hamilton, as you can see, is a story about how you can be free in all that you do. She actually writes in her story that it makes us believe that people could fly. There are separate accounts of flying Africans and the slaves in the folklore literature. Such accounts are often combined with tales of slaves disappearing. So come fly away with me. That's another spiritual, old Negro spiritual, they said could also be related to acts of back in the day where you're trapped and you're oppressed and don't know how to move forward. These are hopes of dreams of how to move forward and how to get out of the trap that you're in. This story here, I actually got this from the library, so you can too, but it's a wonderful story to read to children. I've been telling this story at different churches back when I lived in San Diego, and some of those children who are now grown, they still hold this story dear to their heart. So it's not a story that must stay back in the day, it's a movable story. Just like whatever's in your heart right now, you can tell a story about it. Share your culture with your children. Share your culture with each other and learn what it is, know what it is that you want to share, because history is so important. History is what makes us remember who we are and believe in what we've done. So this last, excuse me, I should do questions first. Are there any questions about the story or how it touched you in any way? Anything you'd like to share about people who could fly or anything that we've covered today?
I didn't understand the silent whisper. What were you saying?
Well, that was it. The magic words, once heard, are seldom remembered. Yeah, and that was the point of the story. In the story, they actually sort of change it in the book, and they say that he says it quickly with whispers and sighs. So I just make it up as I do the story, and depending on, yeah. So, and it's to make you think that is the magic, and if I dig deep, I have magic words also. So that's a good question. Thank you for asking that. Others? Questions? Yes.
Renee, it also goes to the fact that even back then, things were being covered up. And as you go on in life, some of those stories get told the right way, and in that way, people research them and say, well, no, this actually did happen, and here's the proof.
That's a good point. She was saying that some of these things are covered up. And if you notice in some of the videos that we talked about, you may have heard facts that you never heard of before. And just because this is only a 45-minute lecture, I had to cut a lot of the other information that I found out. But it's so educational to try to put a story together, because as you research, you uncover things that you never knew or that you knew and it was written incorrectly. So that's important too, like you were talking about your family and how, I think you said your grandpa shared the stories and then you can move it forward to the next generation. That's important. Other comments or statements? So the last slide that we have is talking about, will be the Black National Anthem. How many of you knew there was a Black National Anthem? Most of the people, but there's a few that did not. The Negro National Anthem is the Black National Anthem and has deep roots in America. It's called Lift Every Voice and Sing. When I do the PowerPoint, the words will come up, but I did lay around a couple of the words. But this was written by James Weldon Johnson and Rosamond Johnson in 1900 to commemorate President Abraham Lincoln's birthday. And that's how this started. So if you would all stand, we're going to, well, excuse me, you don't have to stand yet because as this video starts, it's a few minutes of talk, I believe, in it. But once it does start, this is the Black National Anthem, and we respect this as the National Anthem whenever there are events and this is played. First, everyone rise and then we sing it together. Before we close, that will end my presentation. Did I end too quickly or are we okay? Okay, we're okay. My timer's telling me we're okay. Okay, so this is the one, and if you will all rise for the singing of the Black National Anthem.
I want more from a university. At CTU, I'm not only connected to a powerful
thank you for coming. And if anyone would like to stop and see me for questions one-on-one, I'll be right here with maybe another gift for you.